My mother was the Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much.
When Princess Anne broke her silence, the palace shook, not from scandal, but from something far more symbolic: the transfer of legacy itself. The public wasn't prepared. In a royal family where silence speaks louder than speeches, where every brooch and tiara carries a message of continuity, duty, and quiet power, what Princess Anne revealed shattered the illusion of calm tradition. It wasn't a tabloid exposé or a public feud that turned heads this time. It was a single truth, whispered through generations and finally confirmed. Queen Elizabeth II, in the final years of her reign, had already chosen who would carry her legacy forward, not through a crown or a throne, but through jewels, steeped in centuries of symbolism. Anne, known for her loyalty to the monarchy and her measured public words, didn't speak often, but when she did, the world listened. And what she said sent ripples through royal watchers and insiders alike. In a quiet but calculated moment, she revealed that it was Queen Elizabeth's private wish, never spoken publicly, never written in official records, that Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, would be entrusted with the most treasured pieces of her personal jewelry collection. Not Camilla, who now holds the official title of Queen Consort. Not any of the monarch's other daughters-in-law. Only Catherine. It wasn't favoritism. It was strategy. It was foresight. It was a statement that the late Queen had not only observed Kate's rise, but had planned for it long before the public caught on. This wasn't about diamonds or pearls. It was about power. In the House of Windsor, jewelry doesn't just sparkle, it speaks. The tiara a woman wears to a royal function can declare her rank, her place in the family, her trustworthiness. These are not fashion statements. They're heirlooms, selected and worn with meaning. Each loaned necklace, each brooch passed down, is a message from the past about the future. And when Anne confirmed Kate had been selected to inherit them, not just wear them, but possess them, it wasn't about glamour. It was about trust, about legacy, about continuity in a time when the monarchy is more fragile than ever. But the timing of this revelation raised even more questions. Why now? Why speak at all? With King Charles ascending the throne and Queen Camilla stepping into the spotlight, why would Anne bring up a decision the late Queen had kept so private? The answer lies in the shift happening beneath the royal surface. The monarchy is evolving, and Anne, long a stabilizing figure behind the scenes, knew the time had come to make things clear. The Queen's true intentions needed to be understood. She wanted the world to see where the future was headed. And she made that decision not with a grand proclamation, but through diamonds, sapphires, and tiaras passed hand to hand, from queen to future queen. Kate's quiet rise, once seen as elegant but uneventful, was now revealed to be part of a grander design. The real drama wasn't in her dresses or tabloid headlines. It was hidden in the jewelry boxes of Buckingham Palace, in the silent approval of a monarch who chose not to say the words, but to show them. Camilla's absence from these legacies only made the message louder. In the end, the transfer of legacy wasn't about bloodline. It was about who had earned the Queen's deepest, most guarded trust. And to understand why this moment matters, we must begin with the woman who started it all. Queen Elizabeth II. Her words were rare, but her brooches said everything. In a monarchy built on spectacle and formality, Queen Elizabeth II mastered the most delicate language of all, silence. But make no mistake, silence never meant inaction. Her 70-year reign was a tapestry of restraint, composed not of speeches and declarations, but of nods, gestures, and the subtle glint of a sapphire brooch or a diamond-studded tiara. She didn't need to speak often, because when she did, the world listened. And when she didn't, her jewelry did the talking. Unlike monarchs of the past who ruled with proclamations and visible iron will, Elizabeth wielded her influence like a needle through silk, precise, graceful, and impossible to ignore. Every piece she wore was selected with surgical intent, whether it was during moments of global turmoil or quiet receptions behind palace walls. The Queen's jewels were messages wrapped in elegance, a diamond spray brooch during wartime remembrance, pearls during periods of national mourning, a bright floral pin during royal weddings. These choices weren't ornamental. They were deliberate declarations unspoken, but thunderous in impact. And, over the years, people began to decode her visual language. Reporters studied which jewels appeared when. Diplomats speculated on whether her choice of necklace revealed approval or disapproval. Royal watchers became translators of this jeweled Morse code. But hidden within these calculated choices was something more intimate, something only those closest to her understood. Because while the Queen used her jewelry to communicate with the world, she also used it to mentor, to pass judgment, to bestow trust. And nowhere was this more evident than in the gradual, almost imperceptible transfer of these symbols to one woman, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Long before Anne's revelation, those paying close attention noticed something unusual. Kate was being seen in more and more of the Queen's personal jewelry, not crown regalia, not ceremonial pieces, but the intimate items, the ones Elizabeth had received as gifts, worn during her formative years, and guarded with personal sentiment. These weren't loans of convenience. They were deliberate handovers, each carrying a quiet message. You're ready. You understand. The public missed it at first. After all, Kate had always carried herself with elegance. Her fashion sense was praised, her posture compared to past royals, her presence serene. But what the world didn't see was the deeper meaning behind that borrowed pearl necklace, or the sapphire earrings that once adorned the Queen's own ears at critical moments. Elizabeth was not simply dressing up her granddaughter-in-law. She was anointing her, preparing her, endorsing her not with words, but with jewels that spoke volumes. In this realm of power, where every smile is measured and every appearance orchestrated, the Queen was quietly crafting a legacy, not just through her policies or her presence, but through diamonds and gold. And by allowing Kate to wear them, she was telling the world who the future belonged to. One of the first and most powerful symbols of this quiet mentorship, the legendary Cartier halo tiara. Diamonds, but only one message: you belong. It began, not with fanfare, but with a quiet gesture so quiet that most of the world mistook it for tradition. But for those who understood the royal language, the moment was unmistakable. On the day Catherine Middleton married Prince William, she wore more than a gown and a veil. She wore history. She wore the Cartier halo tiara, a piece that had traveled through generations, worn by women who didn't just attend royal events, but carried the weight of the crown's future. This wasn't merely a decorative headpiece, it was a declaration. The tiara was commissioned in 1936 by King George VI as a gift for his wife, later known as the Queen Mother. Crafted by Cartier, it was no ordinary design, with 739 brilliant cut diamonds and 149 baguette-cut stones set in delicate scroll work. It embodied grace without grandeur, elegance without excess. A tiara meant not for queens already crowned, but for those just beginning their journey. When the Queen Mother passed it on to her daughter Elizabeth, it quietly marked the young princess's transition from girlhood to destiny. It was worn, rarely, but always with purpose. Years later, that same tiara, neither the grandest nor the most ostentatious in the vault, was selected by Queen Elizabeth II for a very specific occasion: the wedding of Kate Middleton. Out of all the regalia she could have chosen, she picked this, not by accident, not by default, but because this tiara, more than any other, signaled a rite of passage. Kate, once an outsider, was being brought in not just as William's wife, but as a woman destined for far more. With that tiara, Elizabeth said everything she needed to, not in speeches or decrees, in diamonds. And as Kate stepped into Westminster Abbey, crowned in subtle symbolism, the true meaning of the halo tiara came to life. It wasn't about dazzling the cameras. It was about linking her to a lineage: Queen Mother, Elizabeth, Margaret, Anne, each a chapter in the monarchy's living history. The tiara had graced the heads of women at turning points in their lives. Now, it was Kate's turn, and by bestowing it upon her, the Queen wasn't just welcoming her into the family, she was crowning her as the future. This was Kate's first royal message, not spoken, but worn. It signaled trust. It signaled belonging. It foreshadowed what few dared to say aloud at the time. This woman was being groomed not simply as a duchess, but as a future queen consort. And from that day forward, every appearance she made, every jewel she wore, would only confirm what the tiara had already declared. But the halo tiara was just the beginning. The real power transfer came with a necklace worth over $66 million. Gift from an empire worn by a queen, entrusted to a future one. It was 1947, a year defined by both endings and beginnings. The British Empire was changing, the world shifting beneath the crown's feet. And in the midst of that change, the Nizam of Hyderabad, then one of the wealthiest men alive, offered Queen Elizabeth a wedding gift so breathtaking it would become one of the most treasured pieces in her private collection. A necklace crafted by Cartier, forged from platinum and diamonds, designed with floral elegance that was both delicate and commanding. But this was not simply an extravagant gesture, it was a diplomatic symbol. One that bridged continents, whispered alliances, and declared respect between old worlds and emerging power. From that moment on, the Nizam of Hyderabad necklace became more than a jewel. It became a statement. Throughout her reign, Queen Elizabeth wore the necklace with unmistakable purpose. It wasn't her go-to for casual appearances. No, she saved it for moments that required presence, strength, and reassurance. When she wore it, she didn't just sparkle, she spoke. Without a word, she reminded the world of Britain's global influence and her own firm grasp on diplomacy. The necklace shimmered at state events, intimate portraits, and international meetings, always present when the stakes were highest. And slowly, the necklace was absorbed into the Queen's image, its diamonds no longer just royal accessories, but symbols of global responsibility and sovereign grace. And then, decades later, a shift. In 2014, the world watched with quiet curiosity as Catherine, then Duchess of Cambridge, appeared at a National Portrait Gallery reception. Around her neck was the Nizam of Hyderabad, the Queen's most diplomatic jewel. Her symbol of global power and personal taste had been entrusted to someone new. Again in 2019, at a diplomatic corps reception, the necklace made another appearance on Kate's shoulders. It was a clear signal, a message embedded not in official declarations, but in the oldest language of monarchy inheritance through elegance. This was not a casual loan. Queen Elizabeth was not known for lending out her personal treasures lightly. And this necklace? It wasn't from the royal vault. It was hers. And to let someone else wear it, especially during events that involved international leaders and cultural institutions, was to say, this woman speaks for us now. This woman is worthy of our legacy. For Kate, the necklace was more than borrowed. Prestige. It was a test, a torch, and a trust all in one. It marked her transformation from William's wife to the monarchy's next great diplomat. Her role was no longer domestic or ceremonial, it was global. And by allowing her to wear that necklace, the Queen effectively endorsed her as the face of a modern royal order, one that could carry the elegance of the past while navigating the pressure of the future. And it wasn't the only royal relic Kate would wear. There were earrings that carried an entire generation's grace, passed from Queen Mother to Elizabeth, then to Kate. These earrings speak louder than titles. In the royal family, where every glance is calculated and every gesture carries centuries of weight, there are no random choices, especially not when it comes to jewels. And perhaps no piece speaks as hauntingly as the Greville chandelier earrings. Crafted with a mix of half-moon, trapeze, and emerald-cut diamonds, these earrings weren't just a symbol of elegance, they were a lineage forged in fire, tradition, and quiet resilience. Gifted by the wealthy and eccentric Margaret Greville to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, they became more than a royal heirloom. They became a signature, a silent badge of queenship. Elizabeth wore them with reverence, not to dazzle, but to command. In formal portraits, at state banquets, during critical post-war years, those earrings stood firm at her ears like crystal armor. And when they passed to Queen Elizabeth II, they transformed into a piece of personal heritage. The young queen wore them not to showcase wealth, but to embody continuity. They gleamed through decades of diplomatic dinners and global reckonings, always whispering the same message. The crown endures. But in 2023, they were seen again this time, dangling from the ears of Catherine, Princess of Wales, as she attended the wedding of Jordan's crown prince. A global event, a stage for diplomacy. And there she was, graceful, poised, yet unmistakably adorned in the weight of history. These weren't just borrowed earrings, they were an inheritance of trust, power, and unspoken responsibility. And Catherine didn't wear them alone. That day, she paired them with the lover's knot tiara, Princess Diana's favorite, a symbol already loaded with emotion and legacy. Together, those two pieces created a message more powerful than any royal decree. A past queen mourned, a present princess rising, a future consort taking shape before the world's eyes. This wasn't mimicry. This wasn't flattery. Catherine was not playing dress-up in the shadows of former royals. She was stepping into the lineage, not with words, but with deliberate symbolism. The earrings, worn across generations of monarchs, had now chosen her, and in that single appearance, she bridged the quiet strength of the Queen Mother, the lifelong duty of Elizabeth II, and the tragic dignity of Princess Diana. In doing so, she did something few women in royal history ever have. She aligned herself with the ghosts of queens past and made it look effortless. To the world, it looked like another stunning royal appearance. But to those who understand the deeper language of monarchy, this was succession in motion. This was a passing of the torch. Without ceremony, without speeches, just diamonds. And as they caught the light in Amen that day, they told the truth the palace hadn't said aloud. Catherine wasn't being prepared. She was already becoming. But amidst all these jewels, one question echoed louder than sparkle. Why not Camilla? She wears the crown, but never the queen's diamonds. Camilla may stand beside the king, adorned in royal robes and seated in the palace of her ancestors. But something is missing, something far more powerful than gold or titles. The late Queen Elizabeth's most personal treasures, the ones that held emotional history and whispered legacy, were never passed to her. Not a necklace, not a brooch, not even a single pair of earrings. While Camilla has full access to the eider crown jewels, the ceremonial regalia reserved for public display, she was left out of something far more intimate. Queen Elizabeth's private collection, the very soul of her symbolism, was never meant for her. And that decision, though never publicly declared, spoke volumes. The Queen's personal jewels were more than heirlooms. They were strategic instruments handed out not as favors, but as endorsements. Every piece carried a message. Every loan was a calculated move. And Camilla, for all her status, was never part of that quiet circle. Her path into the monarchy was riddled with controversy, marked by scandal, and shrouded in public resistance. She had not been raised for the throne. She had not earned the people's trust easily. And in the eyes of Queen Elizabeth, who valued restraint, duty, and public perception above all, Camilla simply didn't fit the mold. There was no mentorship, no private bonding moments, no subtle grooming behind palace doors. Camilla's role, though official, always hovered in a strange space, legitimate but detached. She married into the family late. Her reputation followed her. And Elizabeth, ever the strategist, knew the monarchy couldn't afford ambiguity when it came to legacy. Passing down her personal jewels would have sent a message she wasn't ready to give. It would have risked alienating those still loyal to Diana's memory. It would have stirred questions in the media. And most dangerously, it would have blurred the line between tradition and turmoil. So instead, the Queen chose silence. Not a single interview. Not a single statement. Just a quiet omission that said everything. Camilla may bear the title of Queen, but she would never bear the legacy. The public noticed. Royal watchers raised eyebrows. But behind the polished doors of Windsor, this had been decided long before Charles was crowned. Elizabeth didn't need to explain. Her diamonds already had. Because in the royal world, silence can be louder than a proclamation. And the absence of a jewel, especially one heavy with generational weight, is not an oversight. It's a verdict. Instead, Queen Elizabeth chose a different path, mentoring Kate, silently and purposefully. She didn't ask for power. She earned it, piece by piece. Kate Middleton never needed a royal title to win the public's affection. She didn't storm the gates of Buckingham Palace, didn't demand a spotlight, and never once traded in scandal. Instead, she played a longer game, quiet, deliberate, and grounded in something far more powerful than ambition: purpose. She entered the royal family not with a bang, but with poise, and over the years, she became something the monarchy hadn't seen in decades: a symbol of strength wrapped in simplicity. Her transformation wasn't immediate. It didn't arrive with her wedding dress or her walk down the aisle. It came slowly, over years of showing up, staying composed, and choosing dignity over drama. From a young woman scrutinized for her background, she evolved into a duchess who redefined what royal responsibility looked like in a modern world. And eventually, she was crowned in all but name the Princess of Wales, carrying not just a title, but the weight of a legacy once held by Diana. But this wasn't just public approval. Behind palace walls, something deeper was happening, something unseen, yet undeniable. Kate was building trust with the Queen, one moment at a time. Not through grand gestures, but in private acts, quiet. Lunches, shared car rides, and the most intimate form of royal favor access to Elizabeth's private jewelry collection. Each jewel loaned wasn't a gift, it was an elevation, a nod of recognition, a signal that this woman, this commoner-turned-duchess, was being groomed for something bigger. Kate didn't crumble under pressure. She stood firm as criticism came and went. She smiled through brutal headlines and maintained grace in the face of relentless media frenzy. She navigated public events with the precision of a seasoned diplomat, never overstepping, never shrinking. While others floundered under the weight of royal expectation, Kate flourished quietly. Each time she wore the Queen's pearls, each time she borrowed a tiara that hadn't been seen in years, she wasn't just borrowing history, she was becoming a part of it. These weren't random decisions. The Queen didn't hand out heirlooms on a whim. She observed. She waited. And when she saw the qualities she most admired, restraint, loyalty, devotion, she responded not with praise, but with symbolism. In the world of royalty, a necklace can say more than 1,000 words. And Kate, whether she realized it at first or not, was being crowned in stages. Every jewel, every public nod, every subtle inclusion, it was all a part of the plan. She was no longer just part of the royal family. She was its future. And when the Queen passed, Anne made sure the plan stayed on course. No royal announcement, just Anne's truth, and the future was clear. When Princess Anne speaks, she does not speak lightly. She has long been the monarchy's anchor, the embodiment of duty without spectacle. So when she finally broke her silence, when she confirmed what many had only dared to speculate, the message carried more weight than any royal proclamation. Anne revealed what the late Queen had kept close to her chest for years, that it had been her private plan, meticulously crafted and deliberately concealed, to pass down her most treasured heirlooms, not to the Queen consort, not to her own daughter or granddaughter, but to Catherine, the Princess of Wales. There was no emotion in Anne's delivery, no fanfare to dress the truth, and yet, what she said ignited a quiet revolution. Because what she revealed wasn't about sentiment. It was about strategy. The jewels, those glittering emblems of monarchy, had always been more than ornaments. They were tools, chosen and bestowed with surgical precision. They told a story the palace had never needed to write down, that Elizabeth had seen the future clearly, and that future was Kate. Each brooch, each tiara, each glistening necklace had been placed with intent, not to flatter, not to appease, but to build something, to construct a bridge between the old guard and the new. Anne's revelation peeled back the curtain. It confirmed that Elizabeth hadn't simply hoped Kate would rise to the occasion. She had prepared her for it, trained her in silence, crowned her, not in coronation halls, but behind palace doors, one jewel at a time. And in that moment, the public understood what had been hidden in plain sight. These were not hand-me-downs. They were declarations. Each jewel, a page in the Queen's unwritten succession plan. Anne had delivered the final line. Kate wasn't just part of the royal image, she was its continuation. its evolution. The response was immediate. Across Britain and beyond, the public didn't question the move, they embraced it. There was reassurance in the symmetry, in knowing that the woman wearing Elizabeth's diamonds had also inherited her discipline, her devotion, and her unshakable calm. Anne's words didn't stir scandal. They solidified legacy. They reminded the world that behind every royal tradition, there was a strategy of survival. And Queen Elizabeth had left nothing to chance. Because in the end, Anne hadn't just confirmed who would wear the jewels, she had confirmed who would wear the crown in spirit. And now, with the veil of secrecy finally lifted, the monarchy had never felt more prepared for what came next. And as Kate steps forward, the jewels aren't just ornaments, they're instruments of legacy. Not all queens are crowned on thrones. Some are crowned in silence, with diamonds. Kate Middleton's journey has never been about grand gestures. Her power hasn't come from fiery speeches or theatrical displays, but from something quieter and far more enduring. As the world watches her rise, it becomes increasingly clear. Her crown won't be placed with ceremony alone. It has already been laid, piece by piece, across the years. Not in Westminster Abbey, but in subtle signals, sparkling tiaras, ancestral necklaces, and the quiet weight of trust that once belonged only to Queen Elizabeth II. Her time as queen consort is no longer a distant concept. It's drawing closer with every appearance, every engagement, every carefully chosen brooch that once belonged to a monarch whose entire legacy was built on restraint and dignity. The world anticipates the reappearance of the Cartier halo tiara, a crown first seen on Kate's wedding day, marking her entry into royal life. When it resurfaces, it will not simply represent nostalgia. It will echo the promise that was made years ago, that she was chosen not only to enter the monarchy, but to carry it forward. And then there's the Nizam of Hyderabad necklace, arguably the most regal and the most symbolic of them all. When Kate wears it again, it won't just reflect the lights of a palace chandelier. It will reflect the deepening connection between past and future, between a queen who ruled for 70 years and a woman now entrusted to uphold that legacy, in a world Elizabeth never lived to see. These jewels have become more than adornments. They've become anchors, symbols of unshakable continuity in an era defined by change. But the most powerful part of Kate's ascension is not what she wears. It's what she represents. Her jewelry choices are not about status. They are narratives. She uses them to tell stories the monarchy cannot afford to put into words. A tiara worn during a state visit says more about unity than any statement. A brooch linked to Queen Mary reminds the world of a lineage unbroken. Through pearls and diamonds, Kate is writing a new chapter, one steeped in tradition, but shaped by modern grace. The monarchy, so often accused of stagnation, is moving, and Kate is its bridge. A symbol of evolution that doesn't abandon the past, but honors it in quiet, deliberate ways. She does not overshadow Queen Elizabeth. She channels her echoing the same strength, the same patience, and the same clarity of purpose. Each time she steps into the spotlight, wearing a piece once chosen by the Queen herself, she reminds the public that continuity doesn't shout, it whispers. And still, it holds firm. And now, the question remains, will Kate rise to meet the Queen's silent prophecy? Drop your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And we will see you in the next one.